Hi, I'm Paul Rowan with Texas Nativescapes. We're here today inside Laguna Madre Traders in Crossroads, Texas to show you how to create and maintain sustainable and attractive plant containers for your place of business, home, deck, or patio. Micro gardening is a wonderful way to incorporate unique design elements while adding some color to enhance your space. I'm going to explain how to fill a container using proper ingredients that will guarantee easy maintenance and longevity. These simple and effective steps will make this experience enjoyable and rewarding. So let's get dirty and have some fun. There are a myriad of pots and appropriate containers available on the market, ranging from ceramic, metal, resins, clay, and wood. Regardless of your design preferences, make sure your planter provides excellent drainage so that your plants don't become waterlogged. Make certain there's at least one or more holes in the bottom of your container to allow water to properly flow out freely. Soil. It's the skin of the earth. Your plants depend on healthy, drainable soil packed with micronutrients. Selecting the right potting mix is key for your plants. I don't recommend using soil from your garden or yard because it often contains fungus, insect pests, and other contaminants that can transfer and lead to infection and diseases. Selecting the right potting soil mixture is necessary to support sustainability and longevity. I prefer to use organic potting mixes when I can, and I always use a mixture that affords good drainage. The mix should be relatively lightweight and fluffy, offering a balance of peat, vermiculite, perlite, compost, and possible some organic amendments and fertilizers which you can add to your potting mix to produce vibrant, beautiful plants. Understanding your plant variety and making the right selection is very important. It's essential to select the right plant for the right location. There are all sorts of plants available. Check with your local nursery about what plants are right for you and your location. They will be grateful to assist you in an appropriate selection. When preparing your plant container, make sure the container is clean and free of debris. If you're recycling a previous container, I highly recommend washing the pot with a mild bleach solution to disinfect and clean any lingering contamination. For good drainability, I like to incorporate pieces of old broken pots in the bottom of my container, or you can use stones like these. Transplanting and repotting plants isn't rocket science. I allow my plants to rest a day after I purchase them to avoid transportation shock. I like to place them in a shaded area to recover. Then, gently remove the plant from its container, carefully loosening the roots around the bottom and sides to aerate them to promote growth in its new environment. You can use a fork or a knife for your plant if it's heavily root-bound, and trim the outer edges delicately. However, be careful to maintain the root system integrity and don't remove too much. Let's begin by preparing your container for your plant. I like to begin by adding some pieces of shards of clay, as you see here. So I put them in the bottom of the pot. As you can see, this is really nice because it kind of breaks up the bottom where the soil is going to be. The next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a base of my potting mixture. You want to be sure you break up any of these clumps to loosen it up a little bit. It should look something like this. So what we have here is we have the foundation on the bottom, which are the broken shards of clay, and then we've got your potting mix on top of that. This container is a little bit shallow, so I think I'm going to have to add a little bit more around here to build it up a bit on the base. I don't want to add too much. I want to be sure that it stays light and fluffy so when I get ready to transplant my plant, it's in there and it seats very nicely. Something like this. This is what you're looking to aim to do. Once the plant's in there, then I'm going to backfill around the edges, of course, and fill it up. Another thing that's really important, as you can see with this original container that the plant's in, let's see if I can get it to you so you can see it a little better, is you don't want to build the soil up higher than its original seating, as you can see here. So what that means is the soil is basically going to come up to right around the edge of this lip or where you see the glaze is. That way, the plant itself is going to be in a healthy environment, it's going to be able to breathe, and it's also going to be able to flourish, and the roots are going to be able to take root. I'm really keen on this Dr. Earth. It's a really great organic all-purpose fertilizer, so I like to add this into the base of my soil mixture, so that way I've got a little bit of a jump start for these plants. So what I typically do is I open up the bag and I take just a pinch of it, about this much, and I spread it out a little bit, maybe a little bit more. You don't want to overdo it because it can get too hot. With that being said, I'm going to put a little bit more potting mix back into the container itself, and I'm going to move it around with my hands so it's evenly distributed. This looks pretty good. May add just a little bit more. All right. Now, I've got this really great homemade organic compost that I've been whipping up for the last few years. This is really excellent too, because it provides some additional nutrients to the plant. Certainly doesn't hurt. So I'm going to put a couple of handfuls in here, and again, I'm going to mix that together. Just enough to give it a little extra pump. Just like that. I don't know if you can see this very well, but this is kind of how it looks. You've got the organic compost mixed in and mired together with the fertilizer, and that's excellent. So what that's going to do is that's going to stimulate those roots into the new potting mixture itself. Okay, we're now ready to move on to the next step. So I've got my plant here that I've selected, which happens to be a bougainvillea. I love this plant. Provides a lot of color pop. It's excellent, very stunning. What we have to do now is we have to somehow negotiate how to loosen this up. So what I like to do is I look at it carefully, orientate it a bit, and I typically press it against me. If that's not possible, you can also leverage with your hand and press on it. The objective here is you need to loosen this up. We want to gently remove this plant from its initial container. So here I'm going to work with it a little bit. It's kind of tight. I'm going to squeeze it. And then I'm going to carefully put my hand down into it, and I'm going to firmly grab the base, and I'm going to forcefully pull the bottom towards me. Now this plant's in here pretty good, so that means it's somewhat root bound. I'm going to wiggle it a bit, but not too much because I don't want to overstress this plant. Now it's broken loose. What I'm going to do is gently transfer this container over the top of the existing container that it's going to go in. Something I want to point out here very carefully. This is really important. You can see the root ball. It's well grown. It's moved in. We're going to want to break this up a bit. So the way I like to do that is I like to take a blunt object, as I mentioned earlier, fork, knife, but anything really will do. So I'm going to pierce this very carefully. What that does is it allows air and the roots to break up a little bit. But I want to be careful not to do too much damage to the plant because it's going to go into a little bit of shock regardless. Now I'm going to flip it over some. And just keep probing in here gently. Don't overdo it though. Rotate it a little bit more. Now, I'm going to put my finger in that hole and I'm going to pull down just gently like this. This is really important. Now what you don't want to do is you don't want to pull this thing completely apart. If you do that, you're severely going to damage these roots. So again, to emphasize, what I want to do is loosen this up. I'm going to keep rotating the plant like it is, and I'm going to pull this down. Another thing you can do is you can squeeze it a little bit, as you can see I'm doing here. And what that's continuing to do is break up that bottom. I like to put my fingers into it real good. This is getting really nice. It's a little bit messy, but that's just part of the deal. All right. I'm going to pull these down. On this particular plant, I am not going to trim these roots. I'm going to leave them as they are. Give it a little shake, and I'm going to seed it in here real gently. This is about how I want it. Now, another thing you can do too that's really important is you want to know how the plant's going to be orientated. So you get the best look for it. So this is pretty good. You can't really see it from your vantage point, but what I can show you, or what I can attempt to show you, is this is about at the same level as it was in its original container before it was transplanted. Now that we have our bougainvillea positioned in here, I've got this voided space around the edges. What that means is I'm going to have to add some more potting mixture to it to fill in these areas. So I'm going to loosen it up just a little bit on the top. This is my fingers. I'm working with it gently here. I'm going to squeeze it. This looks pretty good. This plant's going to do really well in here. So I'm going to run my hands around the rim underneath and kind of feel it out to make sure that I've got a nice channel to accept the new potting soil. I'm going to rake the fingers off the top just to loosen up anything else. And now I'm going to apply some more. This is where it gets a little bit tedious. So you want to gently lift up the plant, as you can see here as I'm doing. And I'm going to move that around with my hand. Another thing that's really important is you do not want to over compact this. You need the air to stay in there. So now I'm going to pull it back and orientate it back towards me, but I'm going to have to rotate this pot some. Again, I'm going to gently lift up on these branches down here. Now this is looking really good. This is going to be a happy plant in its new home. I'm going to rake across the top surface with my fingers. However, I want to make a point here that's very important. You don't want to break these roots on the top. That's key. You just want to even everything out. This is looking really nice. Still going to have to add some more here. All right, almost done. That's pretty good. Now, something I want to point out here, if you can kind of zoom in, I'll show you something. Let me lift these up. This is how it should look. This is where the original level was of the original container. You want to keep it nice, soft, and fluffy, as I mentioned earlier. Now, this is a pretty good seeding for this plant. I'm going to give it a little jam, and I'm going to vibrate it a little bit and make sure everything settles in really nicely. Let me rotate it around. What I'm going to do now that I've vibrated it some, I'm going to add just a little bit more potting mix to it. Now, as you water these plants over the season, this potting mix is going to settle a bit and it's going to compress. As that happens, it's very important periodically to add a handful here or there just to maintain the level. What you don't want to do is have this root ball on the original plant sticking above the elevated grade. If you do that, premature drying can happen to the plant, which can lead to other kinds of problems. So keep it very level. Make sure that the soil that's in here stays nice. Now that we have our plant properly seated in its new home in this beautiful container, another thing that I really like to do to dress up my containers is to add either a nice pea gravel or a mulch. In this instance, I'm actually going to add some mulch. What that will do is two things. One, it will make the container very aesthetically pleasing. But most importantly, what it'll do is it'll help retain moisture in this container itself to prevent premature dehydration of the plant, if you will. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this mulch that I'm quite keen on. This happens to be cedar mulch. Great mulch. It also helps fight some of the pests that you find with common house plants and outdoor gardening plants. So I'm going to put this in there and I'm going to level this out really nicely in there as well. And what that will do is during your watering regiments, as you water, it's just going to help hold that moisture in there, and it's also going to give it a really nice contrasting look. So again, I'm going to work around the base, gently lifting these branches, as you can see, and I'm just going to keep applying that on the surface. I usually like to shoot for somewhere around 1 inch of mulch on it. Bougainvilleas really like mulch. I've had good results with them. Now, one thing that I want to point out here that's real important about the bougainvillea is that it is a drought-resistant plant. So it doesn't like a lot of water. In fact, if you overwater this plant, all these beautiful blooms that you see here will have a tendency to fall off. So what I recommend is this. With the bougainvillea specifically, since that's what we have here, is to minimally water that. What does that mean? What that means is this. When you want to check your plant, don't wear a glove like I have, of course. Take a finger. Put your finger down into the soil, and you want to feel the dampness. You don't want it wet. Now that that's done, you're going to get a lot of life out of this, a lot of color. This is going to give you months and months of beautiful blooms and things like that. The next thing that's really important to do here, now that we potted this, is we're going to have to put some water into it because the plant's just been put into its new container, and it needs some nourishment. So by doing that, we want to add water. What the water does is it also helps introduce some of this fertilizer that I put in there, and that gives the plant a jump start so it's going to thrive in this plant. Well, now we're at the final stage, which is the easiest. We're going to have to water this plant to give it a little boost. One thing about watering I wanted to mention, I really prefer to use rainwater. It's slightly acidic and plants really thrive with rainwater. Plus, it doesn't have all the harmful chemicals that you find in city water. So with that being said, we're going to give it a little dose of some good Mother Earth, if you will. So what I'm doing here is I'm just gently pouring this water in here, good old rainwater, and I'm just going to dampen the surface a little bit. And what that does is that's going to help release some of the nutrients in that fertilizer that I put in there earlier. You don't want to overwater it, but you want to give it enough to where it takes seat. Another thing too that the water really does, it's great, is it helps seat this plant into its new home as well. It compresses things down naturally, which is the way Mother Nature intended to be in the first place. So that's pretty good. So what we've got here is a nicely watered plant. The bougainvillea is going to do great in this container. And this pretty much concludes how to plant or transplant or to pot a plant into a new container. Thanks a lot for watching, and stay tuned for next time, and we'll go into some other details with soil amendments and such.